Hello and welcome to English Digest. I'm Seb.
And I'm Elsie. So Seb, since you've been living in Taiwan for a long time, what's the difference between Taiwan and your home country? Between Taiwan and the UK?
There's a lot of differences I could give because, for example, though I'm from the UK, I'm not from London. So I'm not from the biggest city in the UK. I'm from a smaller town in the west of the country. And so there's a lot of differences between a big city like Taipei and the town that I live in. So I would say where I live is probably much greener. There's a lot of like farmland around where I live, very green hills and a lot of forests around. But also it's quite a lot quieter as well, and a lot more space between the houses. You have a lot more room where I live.
Space. That's good. It's just too crowded in here.
It's very dense and very crowded, but my theory in life is that we always like what we didn't have when we were a kid. So because I lived in a quiet place, I like busy places now. I like very crowded places.
Yeah.
But today we're not talking so much, well, our first translation for today's unit isn't talking so much about comparing which cities are better according to our opinions. This one is talking about a ranking system between different cities and what foreigners think about it, and which is kind of like scientifically the best city, we could say, to live in for foreigners.
Which country? Which city is that, I wonder?
I wonder what city it could be. It's London. It's not. Let's get on to our first translation sentence.
Okay,
so our first translation sentence is, last year, Taipei was ranked in first place as the most livable city in the world for foreign residents for the second time in a row by Internations.
Wow,
okay,
really?
So it was Taipei. Wow, okay.
所以台北去年蝉联由这个 Internations 所排名全球外国居民最宜居的城市第一名。这个翻译我们要怎么样去写它呢？时态要注意，我们要用的是过去式，描述过去发生的事情，因为是去年蝉联。
Wow, I didn't know that. So Internations, this is an organization that I think connects foreigners, or we could say expats. We'll get onto expats, what that means later. Connects foreigners in different cities around the world. So it helps you make friends when you move to a new city. I think I've got some ads for this before on social media. And sometimes they put out a list of the cities that foreigners like the most to live in. Okay, so they have said that Taipei is the best city for foreign residents to live in. I can certainly see some reasons why they would say that. Taipei is definitely a very safe place to live, even safer than some of the cities that I lived in Europe, and it's very accessible too.
那再来呢，我们要看到排名，比如说第一名、第二名，我们要用什么样的动词？动词呢可以用 rank， 它的意思是一点点点而分级，所以台北是被评比的对象，所以呢要用被动语态。那名词呢 place 在这边是名次的意思，所以我们可以用 in 加上叙述，再加上 place 来表示名次。所以呢，我们这个翻译的句子当中被动态 was ranked in first place， 还可以用 was named the first place 来说，也就是名列第一，或者是 topped the chart or topped the ranking， 居排行榜之首的意思。那这边给同学们一个例句哦。The teenage singer's first single topped the charts in multiple countries around the world。代表这一位青少年歌手的首支单曲称霸全世界多个国家的排行榜。
So yeah, those are all reasons that might make Taipei a better place to live.
没错，真的有很多的原因可以解释为什么台北会在这个排行榜。
Exactly. It makes it very livable, doesn't it?
Right, livable. 这个形容词呢，代表宜居的、能居住的或是适合居住的。 所以我们除了可以说 suitable for living 之外，还可以用刚刚 Seth 提到的形容词 livable。那字尾你看到 able 或是 ible， 代表的呢，它是能点点点的，或是可以点点点的。那常见的例子像是 acceptable， 那就是可以接受的 ，reliable， 那就是可靠的、可信赖的。一个例句给同学咯。Though this city isn't famous like Los Angeles or New York, it's very livable and pleasant. 代表呢，虽然这座城市不如洛杉矶或是纽约著名，但它非常适合居住，而且也令人感到愉快。
We also saw this word foreign residence, which we've used a couple of times. That's 外国居民. So resident is a noun that comes from the word to reside, 居住. So a resident is someone who lives in a place, basically. A foreign resident is a polite way of saying a foreign person who lives in a place. So I could say I'm a foreign resident of Taipei, for example, because I'm not Taiwanese, but I live in Taipei.
那再来呢，蝉联我们要怎么样表示？蝉联呢，在这个翻译的句子当中呢，就是连续第二次，所以 in a row 它有接连的意思。不过呢，它是置于时间词之后要特别注意哦。那另外呢，形容词 consecutive 它也表示连续的，因此呢 for the second time in a row 我们也可以翻作 for 2 consecutive years， 或者是 for the second consecutive year. For example, this race has been held in our city for 7 years in a row. 代表这个比赛在我们的城市已经连续举办7年了。
Okay, so let's go on to the second sentence of our first translation. And this is giving a bit of reason to why Internations gave Taipei this great ranking. It says, according to Internations chart, compared with other world cities, living expenses are more affordable in Taipei. Okay, so according to Internations chart, that gives us the idea that there's probably a big table or a big graph that they have with lots of different cities and probably with different figures or different values being compared between them. And it says that one of them that Taipei comes out very strongly in is living expenses that are very affordable. So we'll talk about that in a second. Elsie, why don't you help us translate this sentence into Chinese?
OK， 所以呢，这一句的中文是根据 Internations 的排行榜，与其他的世界城市相比呢，台北的生活开销是比较能够负担的。那时态我们要用什么呢？这是一个事实，所以呢，我们要用简单式、现在简单式来描述事实。
So what do you think about this, Elsie? Do you think the salaries in Taipei are good?
So first, I agree that living expenses are more affordable in Taipei compared with other world cities, especially in Western countries. However, the salaries in Taipei, I don't think they're decent enough for Taiwanese. But I don't know about for foreigners. What do you think?
I think it's a bit of a difficult question. I think it's important that we notice that it says affordable. We're talking about a list for foreign residents. So we can say that it's quite affordable for foreign residents, but not everyone. Because I think definitely it's cheaper here. It's cheaper here than in London or Paris or New York or even Madrid, where I was before. All of those places cost more. But the salary here is lower, so it doesn't really matter as much how cheap or expensive something is if you're earning less money. Like in London, it's very expensive. Like you can easily spend 120, 150 pounds just on the MRT every month.
Wow.
But you also earn a lot more money, even in London compared to other parts of the UK. In other parts of the UK, I think an average salary is maybe £30,000 a year, and in London it might be £40,000 a year. That's not an exact number, but it's that kind of difference. You earn a lot more money there because it's more expensive to live there. So that's what
薪水高，物价也高。
exactly.
那这边物价低，薪水不高。
Yes.
对，那与点点点相比，我们要怎么样来表示呢？常见的用法是 compared with， 或是用 compared to。 加上名词之后啊，逗号再接上主词动词，表示呢跟点点点相比之下，逗号之后再接续下面的内容。那如果呢要比较确切的两个物品，我们可以用 compare A with B or compare A to B。除了这个之外呢 compare A to B 也可以当作把 A 比喻成 B 的意思来使用哦。In this class, we will compare Eastern religions like Buddhism with Western ones like Christianity. 那在这堂课里面呢，我们将会比较如佛教等东方宗教，以及像是基督教等西方宗教。再来一个例句 Many people compare the smell of nettle to that of dirty socks, but I disagree. 也就是很多人会把纳豆的气味比拟为臭袜子的味道，但是我不同意。Did I pronounce that word right?
Dirty socks? You did.
What about N-A-T-T-O?
N-A-T-T-O. Oh, natto.
Natto. Because it's Japanese.
Yes, but I don't think we say it that way in English. I think they'll probably just call it natto. Anyway.
Okay.
But I don't know if I compare it to the smell of dirty socks. I do think it's disgusting, though. But it's disgusting in its own way, in my opinion.
I don't
anyway,
like it.
Yeah, one of my least favorite foods. Anyway, going back into the grammar and the vocabulary of this sentence, when we compare two different things, we look at how they might be similar or different. If we contrast them, though, we look specifically for differences between those two things. So here's an example using the phrase in contrast to. In contrast to Vietnam, cigarettes are very expensive in the UK. We could also say in this sentence, compared with Vietnam, cigarettes are very expensive in the UK. But when we use in contrast to, we are implying that Vietnam is different to the UK. We're saying that cigarettes are very cheap there, and there is a big difference with the UK. So this is a good thing to remember if you're ever going to be doing any written exams. At least in the UK, they might ask you to compare two things in a written exam, or they might ask you to contrast two things. They ask you to contrast two things. They want you to focus on the differences, not the similarities. Whereas when you're comparing, you can look at similarities and differences.
OK， 所以特别注意，如果是 contrast 的话，是找不同的地方哦。然后再来生活开销呢，我们可以把它翻译成 living expenses， 通常是复数，或者是 cost of living， 那这个通常就是单数了。名词呢 expense 有花费开销的意思，那常见的搭配词呢，像是 household expenses、legal expenses， 或者是 medical expenses， 也就是医疗上面的开销。
Exactly. Cost of living is an important consideration for many people when they consider moving abroad to work and study. I actually originally wasn't planning to move to Taipei. I wanted to live in Hong Kong instead. However, I found the cost of living there off-putting. It made me less excited about living there. It was quite unattractive, the idea of having to spend a lot of money on my apartment and my food. Having a lower cost of living means you have less pressure to find a job immediately, and you can spend more time pursuing what you want to do for work. So even though Taipei might not have the best salaries, it's also the fact that it's cheaper means that if you're just graduating and you're looking for a job, you have a bit more time to think about what you want to do. You can live cheaply if you focus on living cheaply.
因为开销比较低。OK， 再来能够负担的这个形容词呢，我们可以用 affordable。那它是由动词 afford 跟字尾的 able 组成的一个字。那相反是什么呢？我们在字首加上 un 变成 unaffordable 就可以了。So for example, I like shopping here because the clothes are of high quality but still affordable. 代表呢，我喜欢在这边购物的原因是他们的衣服品质很好，而且很便宜。
Exactly. Okay, let's take a quick break and then move on to our second translation. For part B, we're going to switch up the topic a bit and talk about the music industry, aka the industry, that's 产业, that produces all the songs we listen to on the radio, YouTube, and Spotify. What kind of music are you into, Elsie? What kind of music do you like?
Actually, I don't really listen to music that much.
Ever?
Yeah.
Wow.
If I really need to choose, I would say I like pop music.
Okay, you like pop music. Okay. What are your favorite? What's like one of your favorite singers or bands to listen to?
Oh, I like Queen.
Queen.
Very
Okay.
much. Yeah.
Oh, so you like kind of like rock pop music.
Yes.
I think Queen is a
right. Because of Queen, I started to listen to more music than I used to.
I think Queen are a very interesting band. They were a big, big band in the late 1970s and 1980s in the UK. Well, and everywhere, but they were from the UK. But yeah.
Like you said, Queen's music is more of rock.
I think it's rock music, yeah.
Rock music, right?
It's rock, yeah. So
I should say I like rock music.
Definitely. I
also like Jolene's music. That's pop music.
That's pop music. Jolene's music is pop music. But that's I'm glad you mentioned that because I was wondering what you think about the music in Taiwan, you know, Taiwan's music scene, 台湾的音乐界。
台湾的音乐界哦，I think some artists in Taiwan are working really hard in order to be seen in the world. So like Jolene, she has put a lot of different elements into her music so that her music can be international.
Yes, that's very
around
true.
the world. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's some really good, especially independent artists in Taiwan. That's something that I always thought was kind of cool when I was thinking about moving here and I first arrived. But anyway, we're going to be looking a little bit about some changes and some trends in the music industry in general. So our first sentence says, in a time when music streaming services dominate the market, the most successful pop music is all characterized by brief song lengths and catchy melodies.
OK， 所以这一句呢，我们要从中文翻到英文。那中文是什么呢？在这个音乐串流服务主宰的市场的时代，最成功的流行音乐呢，都以简短的歌曲长度与洗脑的旋律为特点。那时态用什么呢？当然是现在简单式，因为我们在描述一个事实。
Exactly. This sentence makes some interesting observations about mainstream music, 主流音乐. What do you think about this, Elsie? Are pop songs longer these days or shorter?
They are pretty much the same length, right? About 4 minutes. Are they shorter now?
I think, well, this is what this sentence is saying.
Right.
I think I have some opinions. I'll share my opinions about this in a little bit. But I think that personally, I do know that some artists like to make very long progressive melodies. And when I say progressive here, I don't mean like progressive rights. You know, we talk about, you know, feminism and politics, and we talk about people being progressive. Here, I actually mean that the music changes very slowly throughout the song. So you like Queen, right? I think you probably have listened to the song Bohemian Rhapsody.
Well, that's my favorite.
One. Everybody loves that song. That song's very progressive because it changes slowly throughout the song. It's a long song that sounds very different at the end than it does at the beginning. So yeah, I think that some artists still like to do long songs too. We saw this word stream as well. So streaming services are affecting this change.
OK， 串流呢，我们用 stream 这个动词，那这个动词它都有涌出、流出的意思，所以在网络领域当中，该动词的意象被挪用，表达将讯号或资讯不间断的透过网络传给使用者，以达到无需下载就可以线上收听、收看的目的。Streaming service 代表的就是串流服务，也可以表示呢提供此服务的串流平台。那现在有好多的 streaming services， 有好多的串流平台哦。
Exactly. So as we're talking about streaming, I think we also need to talk about buffering. Now, buffering is basically what happens when you're listening to some music on Spotify or watching a video on YouTube and the content stops. and you get that little circle going round and round because it's still loading the content. The internet is too slow. Basically, buffering means it's still downloading the next bit of the video or song. So that's buffering.
OK， 再来呢，主宰我们就可以用到 dominate 这个动词，那表示呢在点点点之中啊占有主要的地位或是握有优势。那也可以用动词 control、rule、lead 或是片语 seize、control of or take control of 来替换。So for example, for decades, Pokemon has dominated the trading card market with its thousands of individual designs. 数十年来呢，宝可梦以它数千种独特的设计主宰了卡牌交易的市场。Wow, that sounds serious.
Yes, it does. It does. Dominate definitely sounds like a very serious word. We could also say that we've talked about these streaming services dominating the music industry. We also talked about short song lengths becoming very popular. They're definitely a major trend in pop music right now. We could also say that they are trending. When something is trending, it is popular right now, normally online or on social media, which is kind of like 热门 in Chinese.
Okay, or 流行 right? When something is trending, 代表那个东西正在流行。OK， 再来呢，我们要说到以点点点为特点。那如果是要表达 A 是 B 的特色，或是 B 以 A 为特色，那依词性的不同呢，有下列几种用法哦。第一个，如果我们用的是动词，我们可以说 A characterize B， 也就是 B is characterized by A， 或者是 B feature A。那 feature 它在这个意思的时候，解释为这个意思的时候是没有被动的用法，要特别注意。第二个，名词的部分，我们可以用 A 加上 be 动词，再加上 a feature， 或者是 a trait， 或者是a characteristic， 再接上 of B， 或者是呢，如果是形容词的话，我们还可以用 A be characteristic, typical or distinctive of B。好，那接下来给同学们一个例句哦。The young artist's work is characterized by soft colors and many cute characters。代表这位年轻的艺术家，他的作品有柔和的颜色，还有许多可爱的人物为特色。
Okay, and we also saw that this is catchy tunes are a characteristic of these songs. So catchy, that is 洗脑, right, Elsie?
很 catchy， 就是让人家很容易记得，也就是洗脑的啦，或者是朗朗上口的。好，我们就可以用到 catchy 这个形容词，或者是呢，也可以用 memorable， 代表难忘的、难以忘记的旋律。那我们也可以用 memorable tunes 来替换 catchy melodies. So for example, the song in that company's new commercial is really catchy. I can't stop singing it.
This has led to a dramatic change in the way music is made, as songwriters have found that the shorter the song is, the more often it is listened to. Okay.
这句的中文是呢，这导致了音乐创作方式的剧烈变化。因为歌曲创作者发现歌曲越短，它就越常被收听。那时态呢，我们要用到的是现在完成时，表达已经完成的动作。
I'm surprised by this actually, but I don't think I agree. As I see it, song length has changed over time. So I think about 100 years ago in the early 20th century, songs were very short. They were like 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes long. But in the 70s and 80s, when disco was popular, they made very, very long songs deliberately because they wanted people to dance for longer. So they would make songs that were 10 minutes, 15 minutes long and had lots of instrumental parts, bits without words, but lots of music. So I don't know, what do you think, Elsie? Personally, I think that song length changes, gets longer and shorter all the time.
Yeah, it depends. I think it's, what do you think? Maybe it's because we live in a fast-paced world, so people now have less patience. So we tend to like to listen to shorter songs.
Maybe.
Maybe that's one of the reasons.
But I think as well, we also like listening to podcasts a lot now and playlists. We like listening to things while we're doing other jobs. And so long songs might be good for that, right? Because you can put on a long song and wash the dishes. You don't have to keep changing the music.
Yeah.
So I'm not convinced, but let's get on to some of the vocab.
Okay.
So we saw this word dramatic, didn't we?
Right. 剧烈的我们可以用 dramatic 来形容，那在语义上面呢有惊人的、程度极大的意思。那我们也可以用 significant, spectacular, substantial 或者是 noticeable 来替换这个字。So for example, with the substantial rise in temperatures globally, we're now seeing the deadly effects of climate change. 也就是随着全球剧烈升温，我们现在正目睹着气候变迁的可怕后果。
Now, if we wanted to talk about the opposite of a dramatic change, we could talk about a gradual change or a gentle change. These are changes that happen gradually, little by little, bit by bit. If we want to talk about a really, really slow change, we could say that it is glacial or that it is changing glacially. A glacier is a river of ice, that you see high up in the mountains that moves very, very slowly, maybe 1 centimeter a day. 冰河, exactly. So if we say that something is happening glacially, it means it's happening extremely slowly.
OK, 那再来呢，如果要表示越点点点就越点点点的时候啊，我们可以用 the 再加上一个 the， 这什么意思呢？也就是 the 先加上比较级，然后加上第一个主词，第一个动词，逗号之后再用 the 加上比较级，再接上第二个主词跟第二个动词，那就表示某事越怎么样，另外一件事就越怎么样。So for example, the more colorful the product is, the more likely kids are to notice it. 代表这件产品的颜色越缤纷，小朋友就会越容易注意到它。
Exactly. Now, lastly, there's one word I would like to point out. We can talk about correlate or correlation. So correlate is a verb. And for a more advanced English structure than the more, we could also use the verb correlate. Now, correlate means that two things happen or occur at the same time. For example, smoking and lung disease are correlated. People who smoke more are more likely to have lung disease. So how can we use this verb in our example sentence? Let's take a look at correlate again. The more colorful, let's take a look at the sentence that you just said, Elsie, again. The more colorful the product is, the more likely kids are to notice it. The amount of color, the brightness of the color affects how noticeable the product is. Using correlate, we could say how noticeable a product is to kids is often correlated with how colorful it is. Okay? So,
也就是代表两者之间有关联性。
Exactly, 有关联性。Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for getting into this sentence. We've already gone a little bit over. So we're going to have to say goodbye now, but we will be back soon with more writing assignments. For English Digest, I'm Seb.
I'm Elsie.
And we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.